Hi. You ever noticed on Monday morning after you've had a fun weekend partying or going to a wedding or a birthday party that you feel worse? And people say, oh, I probably just didn't get enough rest. But the fact is, it's probably because increased glucose. And I am here to explain why glucose increases inflammation. And a lot of us say, I'm not inflamed, I'm not puffy, I don't have rashes on my skin, I don't have open wounds, I don't have pus coming out of my body. But in actual fact, if we were to test your blood for inflammatory markers, you would be inflamed. So I want you to understand that too much glucose causes inflammation through a couple processes. But one, of course, we know is too much blood sugars. If the body has no place to put it, it turns to fat. That is a problem in itself. But too much glucose stimulates something called NFKB. And there is a very long name for that particular compound, and it's called nuclear factor kappa light chain enhancer vitamin B. We're just going to call it NFKB. But what we know is glucose stimulates that. And then what we know is it starts this horrible inflammatory cascade using stimulating cytokines. Some of you may have heard of cytokines. That's cytokines. And that begins inflammation and that begins pain. Well, as you recall, in this whole conversation around omega-6s and omega-3s, omega-6s increase inflammation and omega-3s reduce inflammation. And when you're exposed to bacteria, we go into battle, we go to war, we wage war. The 6s begin this process of stimulating the ability for the immune system to fight. And when it's all over, the omega-3s clean it up, stop the war, put up the white flag for surrender. However, if you consistently are 30-1 or 40-1 with these ratios of 6-3s, now you get into something called chronic inflammation. And that's more problematic because what's happening, well, not more problematic, but actually it's more insidious. And what happens now is the glucose starts to bind with protein and fat. And we call that glycation. And that produces something called advanced glycation end products. That's, the acronym is AGE, AGES, which is sort of what happens is when we glycate our cells, we're losing the ability to have good healthy cells, to have good flexibility in our metabolism. So as we glycate and we age, now we further increase an inflammatory milieu, because the glycation efforts stimulate yet another cascade of inflammation. But yet it's a mild, a little bit of smoke left after the fire. It's constantly there. And the only way we can really start to mitigate that is stop eating sugar all the time, first thing, every day, all day. And replace that with some other foods. Again, not to say you can't have sugar. I'm just saying calm down and have it at the end of the meal. And we can start to mitigate some of these advanced glycation end products, which is super, super important. So what can you do this week? Let's say you have the next 7 days and you make a rule for yourself that you are going to put a seatbelt on your carbs. What does that mean? Well, remember all carbs, bread, pasta, rice, sugar, quinoa, grains, they are carbohydrates and their subunit is glucose. They all turn to glucose. That's different than proteins that turn into amino acids. That's different than fats that turn into individual lipids. But so you're going to put a seatbelt on your carbs, and that would be like the glucose revolution. Hack 1 is first eat fiber, vegetables, sauerkraut, celery, things like that. Then eat your protein and fat, and then have your carbohydrate at the end, because the sugar spike won't go up. So think about putting a seatbelt on your carb. For instance, when you're having oatmeal in the morning, put some yogurt on it because it's got fat and protein. That's great. If you're wanting rice, put some vegetables and put some chicken in that. So maybe after your big meal of the day, you decide to just quickly put on your coat and go for a 10-minute walk. That will also be something you can do for these 7 days. So in the kitchen or in the bathroom, have a little graph, and you ask yourself, this morning, how do I feel in terms of pain? How do I feel in terms of stiffness on a 10-point scale? you might very well find that on day 7, if you stick with this program of putting a seatbelt on your carbs, that you see this declination of your stiffness and your pain during the week, to prove to yourself that what I'm saying actually has some validity behind it, that there's science behind it. I want you still to be able to enjoy a chocolate chip cookie or a little bit of ice cream at the end of a meal, let's say, but you have to prepare yourself to do it right. And you can. So I'm here to support you and encourage you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how you do with the 7-day trial. Thank you.